Welcome to Salvage, a podcast for conversations with artists about the repurposed materials they use in their art practice.
Hi, this is Natalia Korover. Thanks for being here. Please enjoy my conversation with Kate Egnaczak. An interdisciplinary eco-artist, she is committed to challenging viewers to confront the impact of human actions on our natural environment. Her work inspires consciousness and sparks memories related to the act of disposal by transforming discarded materials into powerful public works of art.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
It's nice to see you. It's been a while.
Yes.
So, Kate, I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce your last name. Could you please pronounce it for us?
I can. Egnaczak.
Egnaczak. Okay. I was going to pronounce it completely different way, so I'm glad I asked.
It happens.
Yes. So, Kate, I've known you for a few years now, I think, right? On Instagram?
Yeah.
We met on Instagram first, and then we met in person when you joined my call for asking for more plastic bits and bobs when I was doing that river, and you drove all the way from outside of Boston to bring me a ton of plastic.
Yep.
Thank you again. That was incredible.
You're welcome. Well, those of us who work this way need to support each other, so it's important.
Yeah, I was just sorting actually my plastic bits and bobs of the harder plastic, and I think I still have some of the stuff. I didn't use it all, so I have it. So tell us what you've been up to. I think the last time we spoke, which was as part of the you presented your work to my collective, Repurposer Collective. You talked a lot about that. Was it smelter or some kind of oven? You were melting found cans and stuff.
Yeah, it's a little 10-kilogram furnace. So just like a larger foundry would melt down metal, they'd have like a large furnace and they drop like a container full of metal in. Mine's just small. It hooks up to a propane tank and I can bring it around wherever I want. And so I collect all the aluminum cans, melt it down, and then I've been casting in sand, just little objects. So basically making like a replica of it, but in aluminum from the cans.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Wait, a replica of...
So like I have been casting like bobbers that I've been finding, like fishing bobbers.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Cool. Wow. And where do you find the cans that you melt down?
Well, so my sort of muse for the last 5 years has been a park in Worcester here, Elm Park, which is one of the oldest public parks in the United States. But specifically, I work in the ponds there, and I collect on my paddleboard all of the trash that's floating around in the water. So that's been my primary focus and where I found most of my cans. But I've started as a practice of walking as artistic practice. I've started collecting cans there. And so I've started to think about melting those down. And it's actually led me to a place where I'm thinking about garments made out of repurposed materials that I can collect with. So like conceptually, like something covered in pockets that I would be wearing and then collecting in. So it's like a performance.
Those pockets. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay, cool. So how long have you been cleaning those ponds now? It's been years, right?
It has been years. 2019.
Oh, wow. And you're still digging up trash, or is there new trash?
So I've been doing it every other summer.
Okay.
The first summer was a ton of stuff. The second summer was probably half as much, but I walk in the park and I notice, what's around. So this summer there'll probably be a good amount of trash.
Wow. Yeah, you think about it, because I walk in a park as well, which is pretty, it's surrounded by major highways, but it's pretty wild. Like there's paths, but it's not really a park, like it's not, a park where you can stroll. Sure. I have to wear my hiking boots, And I've been cleaning up trash there for a little over a year now, and I still keep finding new trash
Oh,
and
yes.
old trash. And I'm just amazed. I'm amazed specifically at the new trash because I can't comprehend people who would drop their trash in the forest, no
Yeah.
matter where it is.
Yeah. I mean, working in an urban park's a little bit of a different animal. I mean, just the task of waste removal in the city creates lots of recycling that gets blown out of bins on windy days, and that,
Right.
ends up in the water. The park has lots of trash cans, and I do see most people putting stuff in the trash. Actually, while I'm collecting stuff, people ask me, like, can I take that and put it in the trash for you? And it's like, well, no, I make art out of it, which is a great, it's a great discussion piece. But it's also surrounded by 4 pretty major streets in the city. And then there's a grocery store on one side. So most of the trash that I find is grocery store bags from that grocery store.
Oh, wait, plastic bags?
Yeah, single-use plastic bags.
They haven't been outlawed in Massachusetts?
Not in the state. Certain towns and municipalities have, but not yet in Worcester.
Yeah. So it's funny though, it's been outlawed in New York State, and I'm still finding it everywhere.
Mm.
Just the other day, I was in I don't actually even remember, it was like a small convenience store, and I bought something. I didn't need a bag, but I saw their stash of bags back there, and I was kind of like, wait a minute. Why should it's been a few years since the bags have been outlawed, and why is there still a stash of bags? I don't understand.
It is strange. I mean, you wonder how that's really, monitored.
Yeah, I don't think it is. That's the thing. I did find that there is a government website that you can report someone. Like if you go into a store and they offer you a bag when they're not supposed to offer you a bag, you can actually report them, which feels awful, right?
Right.
Like I'm reporting a small business, but then I don't know how else are you going to stop this from happening? I don't know.
Right. Right. Well, and I think it goes along the lines of you and I in the way we work, out in public space, right? How are we going to stop people from, throwing their trash out into the public space if we're not out there and we're not sort of, holding people a little bit accountable, whether it's, physically or just kind of being that visual reminder of like, hey, somebody's watching you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's true. I mean, I know I have friends who live in Manhattan, and they will tell me that they have picked up something that someone dropped and gave it right back to them. I don't think I could do that. That requires a certain type of, self-assurance, I guess.
Right.
That I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm in that camp either, but I appreciate the people that do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you are melting the cans and you are casting objects, but then you are also doing something with the plastic bags that you are finding as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So I know this woman, her name's Natalia, I think. And I was inspired by her work, your work. And so I have been taking all these plastic bags and I wash them with my rainwater that I capture from our roof and hand wash them all. And then, I've been sewing them into different things, but the latest thing was 2 4-foot by 6-foot banners.
Oh, wow.
That hung in the park between 2 islands. And one was
I
literally.
think I remember that. Yes.
Yeah. So one was literally a list of all of the trash that I found in 2019 that I did all with bags, even the type, which is fun. It's quilting, which, that world. And then it's fun to like expose certain aspects of the bags, like using the logos, using the color. One of the banners had a big cutout. So the colored bags served as like almost like a stained glass window. So it's a fun challenge.
Yeah. That's especially hanging it outside for people to see. That's a whole other step beyond.
Yeah. Well, and as you and I have talked about, the bags break down.
Yeah.
In this, right? So there's a risk you take, but because they're in this show that I am a part of, they're only out there for about 3 months.
Mhm.
So there's a nice period of time there where they can be out there and I don't have to feel awful about them, breaking down and those types of
And
things.
how were they after the 3 months?
Good. So another friend of mine actually inspired me to put layers of regular Elmer's white glue and water between the layers, just so that they have a little bit of adhesive. And they got rained on tons in the park. As you know, last summer was pretty wet, and they held together and nothing chipped off or nothing ripped off.
Huh.
So that was, and it was so, sewn over
Right.
it, but it seemed to just do something to keep the integrity.
Interesting. Because I have had flowers made out of plastic be outside for 2 months, and 2 months seems to be okay. Some of it will fade from the sun, but it doesn't really disintegrate. But once you get past those 2 months, that's when I feel they start breaking down.
Yeah.
Especially flowers, like I had a repeat installation, so I used the flowers from the first installation which were out there for about 2 months, and it was like a year later, and I took them back out and they were again out for 2 months, and after those 2 months there was a lot more breakage, but these were not glued, they were just sewn, and they were three-dimensional. Interesting. I'd have to try it with glue, which of course adds a whole other step into it.
Right.
And I used to use glue a lot when I was stitching my artworks at first, when I was layering the plastic. But then I figured out I didn't need the glue. They were staying together without the need for glue. So I haven't been gluing my plastics in quite a while. I don't know.
And
I don't
usually either, but when I know that it's going to be outside, especially hanging over a body of water, I really wanted to have that little bit of extra insurance. But I also fuse I don't know, do you fuse your plastics before you sew them?
No, I don't fuse them because I've always been afraid of the fumes that gets released when plastic melts. But very recently I spoke to two different artists who, they don't fuse, but they do melt their plastic at really low temperatures. And both of them said that there's a certain point that you can melt the plastic to before it actually starts releasing those chemicals.
I have heard that too.
Yeah.
I work
so
outside.
Now I'm tempted.
Yeah. It is. There is that little piece, right? That's like, okay, I'm doing this really great thing for the environment, but then, am I putting myself at risk?
Right.
In any way. But I work completely outside when I'm fusing. So it's a little bit, those are, yes, released into the atmosphere if they're being released at all, but at least it's not in a closed, confined space.
Right. Yeah. One of the artists was working with soft plastics, and she talked about I guess it's not to the point of melting, but just softening. And that she said was fine. And the other artist worked with hard plastics. And again, she said it was just to the point where they get soft, but not actually melting. So interesting. I don't know. I'm tempted to, experiment with that now, even though I've stayed away from it from all these years. But I don't know. My thing about using the plastic is I always want to transform it so it doesn't look like what it was once, that you have to look closer to realize what it is. So, and I think in some ways melting it or softening it could work for that.
Right.
So I'm thinking about it. I haven't actually done it yet, but it's in there and it's making me think about it.
Well, and that's all part of the process, like, again, when we decide to work this way, and I think Aurora Robson, she's the same way, right?
Yeah.
She's thinking about not only like what's the end product going to look like and how does she get there, but like how in the process is she, eliminating some of the other environmental factors that we don't necessarily see, but they're a major part of the process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, there's so many things to think about when you're working with repurposed materials, because it's not only what you're going to make out of the material, but how are you going to transform it and who else is it going to affect?
Right.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and then the whole process of like, when you're thinking about like how green is a product, right? That all that embodied energy. Where did it come from? How was it made? What was the process of making it? Where was the original source? All of those types of things. You have to kind of think about that in terms of like the final product. And are people asking that same question? Like, what was the embodied energy it took to create this
Right.
thing? So in the back of my head, I'm always kind of thinking about that. And so I try to make my embodied energy as eco-conscious as possible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I try to do that as well by saving all my little tidbits that I get cut off in the process or things like that. But sometimes that gets overwhelming too. All right.
Yeah. Well, and that's so when I made this big banner, each of those letters I hand cut out, but then I had like the counters of the A's and the, all the little tiny pieces. And I kept them all. It's kind of like, what do I do with these? But I'm sure someday I'll figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I usually think as well, until it gets to the point where there's not enough room to store. So I guess what do you do then? Call a friend who uses it too and see if they can use it.
Right.
Or unfortunately, sometimes it does have to go in the trash.
Yeah. Well, I do know a few artists that, because it can be so overwhelming, right? Whatever you work with, you store all of this stuff, but like at what point, either you have to work really fast, or like you have to decide like where your line is in terms of like, okay, I'm going to let this go, but
yeah,
I know it's going back into the waste stream. So there's that balance.
Yeah, I don't know. What is Rebecca saying? Water soluble material. You could sandwich them between it, so over it, and make a new material. What water soluble material are we talking about, Rebecca? I don't know. I'm a little confused by that, so maybe Rebecca will pop in and tell us what she means. Was it the glue? Is that what she was talking about, you think? I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Not sure. But yeah, I lately have started working with resin, and it took me a really long time to allow myself to work with resin, because it's essentially another plastic that now I'm creating, right? Oh, it was Rebecca saying it was used for lace. Is that some kind of, I don't know. Okay. There's another thing to research. Write that down. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I like hemmed and hawed about letting myself work with resin for a long time, but I want to be able to make art that can be displayed outside without, the breaking down, like a soft plastic would, or even a hard plastic. It can last outside longer, but it still will start disintegrating. So I realized that resin would allow me to do that. But then again, I'm creating so much plastic. So now I'm at the stage of experimenting with it. I've made some things, and I'm trying to stuff my molds as much as I can of all the bits of plastic. So I'm not using that much resin. So it's sort of just coating it. So I don't know. Is it really environmentally good to be doing what I'm doing? I'm not sure. But at the same time, I really like the way the resin makes the plastic look inside of it.
Sure, yeah.
Like, makes it somewhat more translucent and sort of brighter and deeper in color. So I really like what it does, and it makes things noticeable as well, because it sort of prettifies them. So I don't know. I was sorting my plastics because I'm experimenting with bigger resin molds now. It's taking a little too long because I like to get stuff done and out, and the resin has to dry.
Right.
So I'm a little bit frustrated in the studio today.
I have been thinking about that same challenge for a long time, in terms of like knowing that it's going to break down, and how do you prevent it from breaking down in order to present it. Wax has been my kind of answer in the back of my head. And then I've been thinking maybe like almost using it like in caustic, and then embedding the plastic into that, but you don't get the translucency.
Right. I think I've actually had people look at my plastic work and ask if it was in caustic, because the layers of the translucent plastic already make it look that way. So I don't know. And what kind of wax, like Was that beeswax you were thinking of using?
Well, I mean, in the past, I've cast microcrystalline wax or paraffin. Microcrystalline, I think, is one of the hardest wax. And it won't break down as much outside, like it won't like melt or something like that. So you have to get a combination of them. But if it's on, like a canvas or something, I've been experimenting with like old chapstick mixed with, old candles and
Oh,
just kind of seeing if I can get some pigments mixed in.
uh-huh.
Really just experimental, but kind of after that same objective.
Right. Yeah. So I guess if you're using old chapstick and old candles, so you're still taking something else now out of the environment. So that's kind of
Right.
cool. But I wonder again if you're melting it to get it to that waxy stage. What is it releasing?
Right.
Right. It's like it's the never-ending questions. There's
Yes.
always something, right?
Well, who was it? Newton, right? That nothing is created or destroyed.
Right.
Isn't that one of his laws?
I think so. I'm not up on my scientists, but yes. I think so.
I think that's Newton. Well, and I was even thinking the other day, and I don't know chemistry at all, but if there's a process to make plastic, shouldn't someone be able to come up with a process to unmake plastic?
So they have. It's just very
Right.
expensive. That's the problem. It's just
Mm,
super expensive and nobody wants to do it. That's why we have to stop making at least the single-use plastic
exactly.
because otherwise, I don't know, we're just going to drown, right?
Right.
Yeah. I was happy to discover that this year's theme for Earth Day was planet versus plastic. I don't know if you saw that from earthday.org.
I didn't.
Yeah. And yeah, worldwide, only 9% of plastics actually get recycled. So
Mhm.
there's our incentive to keep using it in our art, right?
Right.
Because otherwise it's just going to be in the landfill or the
Right.
incinerator. We have an incinerator here, which is like one of the oldest ones in the nation. So I'm sure that's working really well.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, and you and I have talked about just, that recycling in itself, that again, about embodied energy, right? That it takes more energy to recycle it versus,
Right.
we're just using our human energy to repurpose
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's great. Yeah. It's like this overwhelming idea of that there's more and more of it and you can't get rid of it and you can keep making art out of it, but we need more people making art out of it, right?
Yeah. Well, and hopefully by making art, we're putting things into the world that people notice, and maybe it inspires people to make their own form of, repurposed stuff.
Yeah. I'm always hopeful of that. Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what do you have coming up for you this summer?
Well, I'll be back in the park. This will be the first year that I'm back to back years
Mm-hmm.
park, so it'll be interesting to see how much there really is. So I think that's my main focus, and then kind of following this. I call them collection clothes. These garments made out of waste, and then finding some way to document those while I'm
Uh-huh.
collecting. Uh,
So have you started making these garments already?
Lots of sketches, lots of trying stuff out, trying to figure out like how are these pockets made, and what are they made of, and how do they attach. I think I've gotten as far as like sort of like a petticoat of the 6-pack
Oh,
plastic,
okay.
all sort of molded together, and then each of those holes can be like I think of like the tangerine bags
Oh, okay.
woven with other plastic. And so there's like each of those pockets. But as I've been brainstorming it and sort of shopping it around, people are like, you should have clear plastic so that everybody can see like how much is in, whether it's the legs or the skirt or,
Mm-hmm.
those types of things.
There's I can't remember his name. I think it's Rob. I've seen him on Instagram. and he occasionally puts on this clear plastic suit that's just filled with trash. Have you
Yeah.
seen him? And he kind of
Yes.
looks like the Michelin Man as he's walking around. But it's quite effective. I'm not sure that
Mm.
that's the look you're going for, but
Well, in one way, but I think the statement goes. I mean, I'm not quite sure what he does with
yeah,
that
I
trash,
don't know either.
but the statement for me goes a little bit further, right? Like, okay, I'm out here sort of making it obvious what I'm doing, but then what's the next step of that, right? Because I'm not throwing it away. How do I make it public and make it visible what is happening with this stuff? So it's a good challenge. And then I think I told you a while ago all of the other things from the park. So, I've been repurposing the bags and things like that, but I found tons of clothes. I found
Right.
tons of like toys and all those things. So I've been doing these continuous line drawings of those as I kind of study each object. And I'm just taking down a show of the clothes and those they're about 24 by 36 drawings of each of these
Yes, I remember
objects.
seeing them. They're
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, thank you. But so now I have to get to the other departments. I have to make sure I finish up all the toys, and then there's like the bed, bath, and beyond stuff. So that's an exciting thing. I'm a teacher, so the
Right.
summer for me is a really big push. Things don't get necessarily done as much during the year. So
Right. So, but that's right. Now I remember you told me that you run the art department in your school, and everything that you guys use is all repurposed.
we
Can you
try
tell
to.
us about that? That is exciting.
So I call it the zero waste classroom, where first we learn about process and why it's important to think first, which really goes along with reduce, right? So we're kind of using the three R's, and then reuse. So we reuse as much as we possibly can. So even if it comes down to, sorry, the using the other side of a piece of paper, right?
Uh-huh.
Something as simple as that. But we keep all of our scraps of paper,
And
all of it.
do you make like new paper out of it or something like that?
So we make paper out of it. Sometimes we use it for collage.
Mm-hmm.
We'll stack it up and kind of laminate it and turn it into little objects. But yeah, I keep all of we keep all of our dead markers. We put them all in water and make liquid watercolors out of them. And then we take the caps, and we've been kind of exploring like what can we do with the caps. And we use the body of the markers as like building blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, everything we work with, the paper tubes, all of that stuff, that really gives kids a sense of like where things come from,
Mm-hmm.
that they don't need to go directly into the trash. There's a culture, from my perspective, in education of like throw it out, right? Like,
Oh, it's true. Yeah. I mean,
right.
I only did a couple of years of substitute teaching in my kids' school, and I would get excited to be like in the art substituting for the art teacher, and the waste. Forget the glitter. Even get me started on the glitter.
Amen.
But just the paper waste itself, it was just I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So we keep all of that and reuse it and use it as a teaching moment. And then, like I said, like our paint is made from our markers and all of those things. So yeah, we try to keep it in. I used to take a picture of the trash cans every day, but I don't anymore. But there's very little in the trash. The biggest thing over the last couple of years was the hand wipe. The
Yeah,
sanitizing. That was for me like really hard to see. But other than that, not much goes into the trash.
that's awesome. Yeah, I've actually been saving my hand.
I in my practice, I do too.
Yeah. I haven't quite, and then I, wash it with some old towels, but I haven't actually started using it in my art practice yet, but I have a stash.
Well, and I
Gonna
think
come.
I was saving them because they connected for me to you somewhere between the dryer sheets and the
Right.
color catcher sheets,
Yeah.
right? That consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I've been keeping them kind of thinking, I was thinking like if I laminate them with watered down glue, could they be a form of like a Pellon as a
Oh,
base?
maybe.
I'm not sure. I'm
Yeah.
not sure then how it would work to get a needle
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. I think, well, when they are in there just washed out of, and they're soft, so they can certainly be stitched like fabric.
Mhm.
Um, but they're mostly, white, off-white, and some, dirt stains that didn't get washed off. So they're
Right.
not that interesting the way they are. So that's kind of what's been, well, no, I can't really say it's been stopping me, but it's sort of been on the back burner because I got other things going on. So
Sure.
until all of a sudden I'll get like a revelation of what I need to do with them, then I'll jump right in. But until that happens, they're just kind of piling up.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that, right? Like the piling up. Where where do we draw the line? Like, do you have to wait for the idea, or do you just start digging into them, or do you keep them for a long time and then unfortunately have to part your ways with them?
I think
It's
all of those are
yeah.
valid. I think that can all happen. It's just, I think, I don't know about you, but a lot of my work is sort of based on intuition.
Mhm.
So I'll be working on something and be like, I'm trying to do this, but this doesn't work. What if I do this? And I
Sure.
just kind of like flow with it until
Mhm.
I figure out how to achieve the effect that I'm trying to achieve. And that's when I figure out, oh, that wet wipe, this is where it
Mhm.
goes. That's how it works for me.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my work, especially around, the park and the trash, it really gets inspired by whatever it is that I pick up,
Hmm.
like the chip bag, that the plastic outer, um, like covering has separated from the foil,
Hmm.
right? Like, and nature happened to do that, but then it's like, oh wow, like I wonder if I could do that, separate that plastic from the foil. Um, but yeah, things have to kind of sit. And I always say, like, I need to work faster with my trash because, I've made trash precious.
Hmm.
Somehow I have to undo that a little bit to keep experimenting and playing around, because really these are materials that we've never used before. And so we've got to figure out how to use them differently. And so that only will happen if I get my hands a little more dirty.
Yeah, no, you can't be too precious with it because then it becomes something else. So you can't, like, I think when you become too precious about your materials, then you can't grow with them.
Right.
They'll never, yeah, the experimenting will be halted because you wouldn't want to ruin them. But
Hmm.
until you ruin them, you won't know what they'll do.
Exactly. Well, that's been my process with the glass bottles. So all of the glass bottles from the park, um, that was part of the grant that I got to pay for the furnace. But I also got some glassworking materials, but it forced me to research glass bottles, which in the glass process, there's something called the COE, or the coefficient of expansion. So different kinds of glass expand at different
Mhm.
rates. So you can't put something that has a COE of, I'm just making up numbers, but a COE of 10 with something that's a COE of 5, because if you put them together, one's going to expand faster. They're either not going to connect and fuse together, or one will actually like
Oh,
explode,
oh my gosh.
which I had no idea until I was exploring this challenge of, what do I do with these bottles? And then I found out that even the bottles, so like a 6-pack of Corona from yesterday is not the same materials as a 6-pack of Corona from 2 years ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
those aren't even compatible. And so I was left in this like conundrum of like, I've got all these bottles. What do I do with them? I had these like big aspirations for like melting
Hmm.
them down, and that wasn't going to work. So I actually have something that I put in my microwave. Well, not my microwave, separate microwave.
Right.
Um, that you can actually melt them down, but I only can do like, this much at a
Right.
time.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it's been a fun challenge.
Yeah. So I find glass bottles a lot too. But if I find the whole bottles, I put them into my recycling at home because glass is one of the most recyclable
Right.
materials there is, right? But broken glass is not recyclable. You
Right.
can't put that into your recycling. So I've been saving the broken
Mm,
glass. And some of it I have trapped in resin, but the clear glass completely disappears in the
right.
resin. You can sort of, when you look at it close up, you can see that it is something there, but from just a glance from far away, it disappears. So yeah, I keep picking up the broken bits, but I don't know what I'm going to do with them yet.
Well, you might need a microwave can. I'm the same way with the cans. Like if it's something that I can recycle, right? Like because metal is again one of the other, endlessly recycled products. But if it stands up by itself and it's clean, which most of the stuff I collect is not clean because it's in the water. But if I'm lucky enough, like I'll recycle that stuff. But yeah, all the other stuff I have to.
Yeah, I guess if it's a squashed can that's got caked mud in it, you can't put it into recycling.
It has to stand up by itself, and the logo or branding has to be visible.
Oh, interesting. Even the logo and the branding. All right, so I might have thrown some cans into recycling that I shouldn't have. I didn't know that. I didn't throw the squashed ones or the rusted ones, but some that are, kind of lost its graphics I have put in there. All right, good to know. I didn't know that. Hi.
That may not be universal. That may be, I don't know. I don't know how that stuff works.
That's true. Yeah. Recycling laws are just so different in every town. Yeah. There we are, back to recycling. That does not work.
Right. Exactly.
Oh, wow. Well, Kate, this has been so much fun talking to you. I love catching up. We should do this more often.
Absolutely. I know. You're absolutely right. I need to get into the practice of leaning into conversations with people that are working like me, as we all probably should.
Definitely. So, well, it was great talking with you, and I'll share this live shortly.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit Kate at kateegnaczak.com. Everything is in the show notes, and I'll see you soon. This podcast was created, produced, and edited by me, Natalia Korover. Theme music by R.C. Gaida. Find out more about me at artbynatalia.com. Find out about my community at repurposercollective.com. And about my kids' education initiatives at ecoloop.art. Thank you for listening.